Good morning. Please introduce yourselves and you can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Judy Randall. I'm the Deputy Legislative Auditor for OLA's Program Evaluation Division. I wanted to thank Mr. Chair and the committee for hearing a high-level overview of our findings and recommendations of our evaluation of the Guardians Ad Litem program. We released this evaluation late last month. As you know, Guardians Ad Litem have an important role in our judicial system. Guardians Ad Litem are assigned to certain cases where a child or children are in a difficult situation. In these cases, Guardians Ad Litem are expected to represent the best interests of a child. For example, if a child is abused or neglected or in the middle of a custody dispute, a Guardian Ad Litem may be assigned to the case. And then the Guardian Ad Litem is expected to go review the environment of that child and make recommendations to the court about the best interests of the child. It's a hard job, and Guardians Ad Litem interact with families when they're in the middle of a hard situation. They're dealing with families when they're especially vulnerable. Our evaluation of the Guardian Ad Litem program focuses mostly on governance and oversight. We did not focus on individual cases. And at times, our findings and recommendations that Ms. Rodriguez is going to present may seem a little process-focused. But I think it's important for all of us in the room to remember, as we walk through our findings and recommendations, the child or the children who are at the center of the services. They're at the center of what the Guardian Ad Litem is looking out for and advocating for. Ultimately, protecting the interests of the child is the reason why the state has established this Guardians Ad Litem program. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn now to Ms. Rodriguez, who was the evaluation manager of our evaluation, to talk more about our actual findings and recommendations. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Jody Rodriguez, and I'm with the Office of the Legislative Auditor. I'd like to start by thanking the committee for their interest in our evaluation of the Guardian Ad Litem program. I'd also like to acknowledge the other members of the evaluation team, Caitlin Badger and Christina Doan, who are seated behind me. Today, I'll be focusing on two of the key findings from our evaluation. First, as of the end of fiscal year 2017, the Guardian Ad Litem program had not assigned guardians to some cases for which they were required. And second, the Guardian Ad Litem board has provided limited oversight and direction to the Guardian Ad Litem program. I'm going to back up and give just a little bit of background about the Guardian program before I dive a little bit deeper into these two key findings. Courts appoint Guardians Ad Litem to advocate for children in certain types of court cases. Children become involved in court cases for a variety of reasons. In some cases, a child's parent may have a chemical dependency issue that affects their ability to care for their children. In other cases, there may be physical or emotional abuse in the relationship between the parent and child. In these types of cases, the court must make decisions that can have a profound impact on the child's life. And Guardians Ad Litem are appointed to advocate for the child's best interests in a court case and ensure that the child's needs are not overlooked during the court process. As Ms. Randall noted, our evaluation is focused on processes and procedures, but those processes and procedures are important for ensuring that the services that the children are receiving from the Guardian Ad Litem program are of high quality. Both federal and state law require the appointment of a Guardian Ad Litem in cases of child abuse, neglect, or abandonment. And in Minnesota, those cases are heard in juvenile court. State law also requires the appointment of Guardian Ad Litem in certain family court cases where the court has reason to believe that the child is abused or neglected. State law also requires or permits courts to appoint Guardians Ad Litem in other types of court cases. In addition, state law provides broad guidelines about the activities Guardians Ad Litem must perform during their duties. Generally, guardians must investigate the child's situation, including observing children in their home and interviewing children's parents and others with knowledge about the case, including teachers or therapists. They must prepare written reports about the child's best interests and submit those to the courts. And they must advocate for the child's interests during judicial proceedings. Now, the Guardian program has gone through a number of administrative changes in the last 20 years. But in 2010, the legislature created an independent Guardian Ad Litem board to administer the program. By law, the program has financial and policy-related duties and is required to appoint a program administrator to carry out the program's operations. At the end of fiscal year 2017, the Guardian Ad Litem program had over 550 staff and volunteer, including about 320 volunteer guardians ad litem and nearly 200 full and part-time employee guardians. Nearly all of the program's volunteers are in Hennepin and Ramsey counties. While volunteers comprise the majority of the guardian workforce, as you can see here, employee guardians manage significantly more cases. Now that I've provided just a little bit more of background about the program, I'd like to dive a little bit further into our findings. The first having to do with guardian appointments. As I noted earlier, courts are required to appoint guardians to cases of child abuse and neglect in juvenile court. And the number of these types of cases has increased greatly in recent years. As you can see here, there was an increase between fiscal years 2015 and 2017 of 25%. While the number of these types of cases increased substantially, the Guardian workforce increased only modestly during the same period. The Guardian program reporting increasing its workforce by 13% or 22 full-time equivalent staff members from fiscal year 2015 to 2017. Now, as the Guardian program struggled to meet the increasing demands for Guardian services in juvenile court, the Guardian Board adopted a case prioritization policy. Before the court can appoint a guardian to a case, the Guardian program must first assign a specific guardian to that case. And the board, in this policy, has directed managers to first assign guardians to juvenile court cases involving child abuse and neglect, then to family court cases for which guardians are required, and then to specific other types of cases. Now, in passing this policy, the board was prioritizing assigning guardians to certain types of cases over others for which the guardian is also required by law. You can see the effect this policy has had on guardian appointments. We found that as appointments in juvenile court increased by almost 40% between fiscal years 2015 and 17, they decreased by about 25% in family court. Now, that's at the same time family court filings or family court cases remained relatively stable. We also found that the program had not assigned guardians to more than 500 cases for which a guardian was required as of the end of fiscal year 2017. That means that hundreds of children who the state had determined required an advocate in the court process did not have one at that time. And this may underestimate the number of cases that by law should have a guardian assigned but do not. Several judges we interviewed said that they no longer even request guardians ad litem in family court cases, even if they're considered mandatory appointments, because they know that the program does not have enough resources to appoint them. Given these issues, we make recommendations both for the board and for the legislature. For the board, we recommend that they develop a clear plan for how they can assign guardians to all cases for which they are required. Now, we think that the board has some work to do before they can do this, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a few moments. For the legislature, we recommend that you consider the board's plan, and that at the same time, the legislature review statutory requirements, both for the cases to which guardians may or must be appointed, and for the duties that guardians are required to do on each case, and determine whether these requirements still meet the state's needs and priorities. Once the legislature has done that, we recommend that the legislature determine the necessary level of funding for the program to follow all requirements that are in law. Now, moving on from appointments, I'd like to talk a bit about our second key finding, which is regarding the board oversight of the program. As we noted earlier, one of the board's responsibilities is to establish policies for the program. But we found that the board has established few standards for guardian ad litem work. For example, the board has not established standards for certain investigatory activities, such as how often a guardian should visit a child, or when guardians should review certain types of documents. The board has not established criteria guardians should use when making recommendations, and it has not set standards for how guardians should document the work that they're doing. Without clear standards, guardians are left with considerable discretion as to how they will go about performing their duties. And in our evaluation, we found that guardians' work varied significantly across cases. For example, we examined the Guardians Program's data for fiscal years 2016 and 17 and looked at the median number of times a guardian visited a child in the first 6 months after they were assigned to advocate for that child. We found that the median number of visits in that 6-month period was 4, but it ranged from, as you can see here, guardians did not visit 12% of children at all during that first 6 months, while guardians visited 7% of children 8 or more times. We also found that without clear standards, the number of cases that guardians were managing at one time varied across judicial districts. Using program data from the end of fiscal year 2017, we looked at the median caseloads for one full-time equivalent staff member. Now, as you can see, median caseloads ran from about 30 in the 8th district to more than 46 in the 3rd district. Now, the reason we found this level of variation in the type of work that guardians were performing and the caseloads concerning is that we felt that it may indicate that children in similarly difficult situations may be receiving different levels of advocacy and services from the program. We also found that the Guardian Ad Litem Board has not actively monitored the performance of the program. For example, we found that it evaluated the performance of the former program administrator who was in her position for 6.5 years, only once during that time period. We also found that although the board has engaged in some strategic planning activities, it has not adopted a strategic plan, nor has it set very many measurable goals for the program. Now, without performing these activities, it's unclear to us how the board was ensuring that the program was providing high-quality services to the children that guardians are advocating for. I'll conclude with just a few of our key recommendations. As we noted earlier, we believe that the board has some work to do before it can provide the legislature with a concrete plan as to how it can meet all requirements in law, including a number of guardians that it would need in order to do that. First, we believe that the Guardian Board needs to adopt standards for guardians' work. We also think that they should develop caseload standards for guardians. As you can imagine, the more work that a guardian is supposed to be doing on a case, the fewer cases they can manage effectively at once, and therefore the more guardians would be needed. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, members, before we do any questions, we can see if Kristen Treble can come forward and
Good morning.
good morning. Please state your name and proceed with your response to the legislative audit report.
My name is Kristen Treble-Halbersma, and I'm the program administrator. I have with me our board chair as well, Krista Parkin. Would you like to hear from her first, Mr. Chairman?
Whichever you would prefer.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the program evaluation of the State of Minnesota Guardian Ad Litem Board. We are appreciative of the objective and thoughtful feedback. In 2010, the legislature established the Guardian Ad Litem Board to administer the statewide Guardian Ad Litem program in Minnesota. Since its creation, child protection case filings have drastically increased. From fiscal year 2013 to fiscal year 2017, child protection case filings have increased 55% statewide. The Guardian Ad Litem program has not been able to keep up with the increase of cases. Now managers and coordinators who are charged with supervising and training are carrying caseloads. Caseload sizes are high, resulting in guardians ad litem being overworked and highly stressed. They are, at times, having to make decisions between visiting children or writing reports, and often have as many as 60 children assigned to them at a time. Our central management staff is only 4.5 full-time equivalents, which does not allow for the adequate statewide support and supervision that would be ideal for a program that employs and supports approximately 517 staff and volunteer guardians ad litem. As the report accurately points out, the guardian ad litem program has not been able to assign a guardian ad litem for all mandatory cases. Federal and state law requires guardians ad litem to be appointed to cases in which abuse or neglect has occurred. This has resulted in a lack of advocacy for children affected by abuse and neglect in our state. The Guardian Ad Litem Board is unable to meet these children's needs given the drastic shortage of resources. Our vulnerable children deserve better. As you are aware, the Guardian Ad Litem Board is currently in the process of addressing many of the recommendations in the report. We acknowledge that board development could be improved and program standards and goals should be developed further. We have begun taking steps to prepare for a long-range board planning process. We have also taken immediate steps over the past several months to address the following. We have assessed the program budget. We have reallocated funding and implemented financial controls to most effectively utilize our currently available fiscal resources. We have procured a learning management system to allow for statewide tracking of requirements and to provide online learning modules for our mandatory trainings. The system will also provide supervisory training modules that will allow us to provide for a supervisory training track. We have contracted with a Minnesota management and budget consultant to assist in policy governance development, strategic planning, and the development of board orientation. We have established procedures for the statewide collection of complaint data. We have developed a Guardian Ad Litem Board stakeholder subcommittee to determine the best advocacy model for children involved in family court cases, and we have developed a case count committee to further analyze standardized caseload levels. Resource limitations are an issue that will impact our ability and timing to implement some of the report recommendations. Many of the performance measure recommendations will be resolved with enhancements to our case management system. The Guardian Ad Litem Board developed an improved independent case management system after the creation of the Guardian Ad Litem Board. We have many items that we want to pursue that would assist in monitoring work and providing quality assurance. However, at this time, many of them are cost prohibitive. The Guardian Ad Litem Board is committed to addressing the problems identified in this report and to finding solutions to improve the effectiveness of our program to enhance advocacy for Minnesota's children. We look forward to working with the legislature on the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I add a few comments as well?
You may.
Okay. I would like to thank the members of the Office of the Legislative Auditors for their work on this report and their thorough analysis and assessment of the program. As Chair Parkin pointed out, the board and the program have been working hard to address several recommendations included in the OLA report, many of which were started before the report was finalized. Staff have already begun work with a consultant to assist in policy governance and board development. Yesterday, the consultant attended our board meeting to discuss the work ahead and assured us that we will address the 5 key recommendations regarding our board through their work. We have a 2-day work session planned for May 9th and 10th to start working with our board on the development and changes necessary. We are taking action to make the changes we can as quickly as possible. Some of the necessary changes will require an increase in our resources. As you will see when I walk you through our budget request, almost all of our program resources have been used for case assignment and advocacy for children, yet we are still not able to meet all of our mandates. Much of our management staff time has been devoted to managing waiting lists for case assignments and responding to public and judicial concerns regarding our inability to assign guardians ad litem to certain cases. In addition, many of our supervisory staff also take cases to strive to provide advocacy for as many children as possible. For the past several sessions, the Guardian Ad Litem Board has requested additional funding. We have not received the full request. In addition, each year, cases continue to rise. We are committed to making the changes to meet the needs of all of the children, but we do need additional resources to do so. The board and the program management find itself in a very precarious position with having to prioritize among our mandated cases and not assigning cases pursuant to a court order. Judges have contacted the board and program management regarding the lack of resources and the effect on the judicial system and on the children that we serve. Issues identified due to noncompliance with mandates and court orders include lack of timely and quality resolution of cases, in addition to a lack of necessary information regarding the children. In the area of family cases, the guardian ad litem is the only individual providing independent child-focused information to the court. As our juvenile cases have risen, the program has decreased the services that we provide in family court. In 2011, we allocated 41% of our personnel resources to family cases. In 2017, it has dropped to only 13%. Over the past several months, I have attended a number of bench meetings throughout the state. I consistently hear about the need for guardians ad litem in family cases, especially when there are allegations of abuse and neglect. We're excited for the work ahead of us, and we're committed to developing the best program possible. The children in the state of Minnesota deserve the very best that we can offer. The children we work with are vulnerable, abused, and neglected, and we are the caring adult representing nothing but their best interests throughout an at times very adversarial process. Our work is essential to ensuring that children's needs are considered and met during their court case. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Members have any questions? Please have them related to the OLA report, and we have a budget request coming up. We can keep those questions for at that time. Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, my question is for the OLA.
Go ahead, Representative Considine.
Thank you. Under your recommendations, it says adopt standards for guardian ad litem work. Would this include educational standards and training standards for working as a guardian ad litem? And would those standards be the same for volunteers and employees?
Ms. Randall.
Thank you, actually, Ms. Rodriguez.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Considine. That particular recommendation is specific only to the work that guardians perform in the field. So their investigations, for example. We found that there weren't a lot of standards regarding how often they should visit children, what types of documents they should be looking at, how many other people they should be including in their investigation in terms of should they be talking to teachers or therapists or doctors. So that was specifically regarding that. Now, regarding training and qualifications, the board does have minimum qualifications for training, and they do have minimum qualifications for becoming a guardian. We did not make specific recommendations to increase those because we think that there's some work that needs to be done in terms of determining exactly what a guardian ad litem should be doing on each case before there are questions as to whether those need to be changed. Did that answer your question?
No, not really, but then it doesn't sound like that's what you look into. So, Mr. Chair, then I would guess I would go to the director with that same question. Are the training and educational requirements the same for volunteers and folks? And if you could briefly outline what those are, because at one time I knew guardian litems were required to have a high school degree. And I believe that has changed starting in about 2011, but I'm not current as to what they are now.
Yes.
Mr. Rebel.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and members. The training is the same for the volunteers as well as the employees of the program. We require 40-hour, what we consider a pre-service training core course that they need to attend when they are hired or they are brought into the program as a volunteer. In addition, we have 6 hours of ICWA training, Indian Child Welfare Act training that guardians need to complete within their first year of service, domestic violence training, and if guardians take family cases, we also have 32 hours of family court training as well.
Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Educational requirements?
Ms. Drebel?
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members, the educational requirements are, we prefer a four-year degree. However, it can be a combination of degree or education and experience.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Representative Constantine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more question. Now it's slipping from me. I'll have to come back to it. Thanks.
Representative Pinto?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I want to ask just a little more about the assignment of guardians ad litem. From the OLA report and from the presentation, there's the point the board should develop a clear plan for assigning guardians, and I guess I'm confused because it seems like the plan seems fairly clear. So could you just expand just a little bit from the OLA report on what the problem is in terms of assignment other than simply insufficient funding?
Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Pinto. I think that goes back to our recommendations that we believe there need to be standards for what the guardian is expected to do on each case, and therefore how many cases they should be expected to be carrying. We saw a wide variety of the types of investigations that were being performed throughout the state. And so to us, it wasn't clear exactly how many guardians they need in order to meet those requirements. If they're only expected to do a small amount of work on a case, then obviously they can probably handle a larger number of cases, and therefore they need fewer guardians. However, if they're expected to do a larger amount of work, then again, they can have fewer cases, they would need more guardians. So that's where we say we need to see a plan in terms of what's expected of all guardians, therefore how many cases can they reasonably handle, and how many guardians are needed in order to fulfill those requirements.
So, Mr. Chair,
Representative Pinto?
so that feels like that's mixing a couple different things, though, because there's the question of if a guardian is required to be assigned in a given case, and as I look at the prioritization, it seems like juvenile court cases, related abuse and neglect, family court cases, it's basically cases where there is a guardian is required. That seems separate, like a separate issue than the caseload for a given guardian, if you understand the point that I'm making there. And I guess I'm just, for a given case, if there are, if a guardian needs to be assigned, but there's no guardian that's available to be assigned, then the board has to, I guess, prioritize which cases get which guardians. Is my question making any sense to you? Mr. Chair, maybe I'll ask that.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Mr. Chair, Representative Pinto, I think the point we're making is that we understand that they need to make decisions in terms of when they have limited resources, they have to make certain decisions. They can make different types of decisions. They have decided that they're going to prioritize certain types of cases, assigning certain types of cases. There are other decisions that could have been made. They could have decided that guardians were going to perform fewer duties on more cases. So all we're saying is that we would like to know concretely what are they committing to providing for the children they're advocating for, and therefore what are the resources that they need in order to commit to providing those resources or those activities.
Ms. Randall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, Representative Pinto. If I could just also jump in, I think you're right that these issues are all kind of interwoven, and so you're sensing that from us. And yes, the program has a clear set of priorities, but what that ultimately means is that they are making choices about which required cases actually get the guardians, and so, or the guardians ad litem. So the legislature has said, we think guardians ad litem should, are required to be in place in all of these different cases, and then because of how the work is being managed right now, the program is saying, well, we can't get to all of them, so we're making choices. And so, first of all, we think that needs to come back to you and say, are you comfortable with that, right? They're making choices about kind of which requirements to follow. And then we think there's a lot of reasons why that's happening. And one is because it's not clear about the extent of the work guardians ad litem need to do. And actually, if I could point you, I think you all have a copy of the report in front of you. If I could point you to page 33 in the report, I think there's just a really interesting exhibit there that shows some of the variation of the work that the guardians ad litem do. These are two different reports that are submitted from two different guardians ad litem, and you can see on the left side the excerpt from The first report is incredibly detailed and has a lot of information there about what the guardian ad litem saw and did. And the excerpt on the right column, which is significantly narrower, there's a lot less information there. And in some ways, that really kind of shows, we think, the difference in expectations and standards. And so we think step one is to make it clear what are the expectations for guardians ad litem, and then figure out what resources are needed to meet all the requirements in law, or then does the legislature want to change where they're required to be? So you're right, they're all interwoven, but hopefully that helped a little.
Mr. Chair, I saw that, yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members, if I may add a few comments. First of all, we do have some management standards regarding caseload sizes. They have not been formally established and adopted by the board. However, we do have standards that the managers throughout the program have utilized for caseload sizes, which the standard right now is 30 cases. The Governor's Task Force on Child Protection adopted standards for child protection social workers, which are 10 cases. So our standards, although our work is different than social services, our standards are much different as well. The other piece that I wanted to point out is that the work on specific cases is very dependent on the case type as well as where you are within that case. So if it's an initial child protection case, there's going to be more work that needs to be done versus if the case is at an adoption status. So I do believe that there is more work that we can do from a program standpoint regarding standards, expectations, and quality of work. However, we do have some standards in place. The other piece that I wanted to point to is the report. We don't know the circumstances behind that report. I absolutely agree that that is not quality work with the report that was on the right-hand side of that exhibit. However, we have had a number of guardians leave the program due to high caseload sizes and the stress of the work and low pay. And so at times, the program is in the position of having to reassign cases. And at times, reports will look like that because it will be a case that a new guardian is walking into and taking over the case for the prior guardian. The other piece that I wanted to point out is that we don't want to be in the position of having to prioritize cases. That's why we're asking the legislature and ask the governor for additional funding so that we have the resources in which to provide a guardian ad litem for each court order that we receive.
Mr. Chair, final question, if I can.
Representative Pinto,
This is, I just,
so you know, the room is reserved for 5 o'clock, so it looks like we will be here at 5 o'clock now.
okay, this will be real quick then. I see that the board has convened a committee to assess to give recommendations for the role, and I just wonder when will that committee be expected to produce its recommendations?
Mr. Chairman and members, can you repeat your question, please, Representative Pinto?
And Mr. Chair, the question was, when will the committee that's producing recommendations on the role of guardians ad litem produce their recommendations? Be expected to do so.
Mr. Rebel?
Mr. Chairman and members, we have convened a committee to look at the role of guardians ad litem in our family court cases, and we hope to have that recommendation to the board, the guardian ad litem board, by June or July.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hillstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So members, I want to give a little bit of a historical perspective because I actually put some of the standards in statute on the Guardian Ad Litem Board back in 2002 when they transitioned from county employees to state employees, and we professionalized them. And then I was the author of the bill that created the board that currently is in place right now. The Guardian Ad Litems have been the subject of political debate in this body for a long time. And usually it relates to divorce cases and not related to abuse cases unrelated to divorce. And so there was a time back in 2002 when Steve Smith from Mound was the chair, and there was a specific intent to starve the Guardian Ad Litem program to keep them from being able to do divorce cases, because that's where the highest contention is. Then the legislature decided we wanted to put professional standards in the statute, and we created some standards and training requirements. Then the court, back in 2010, I think was the year, decided that it shouldn't be supervised by the Supreme Court because that's where it was under. And we spun them off and we modeled the board after the Public Defense Board. It's to look exactly like it and have the same duties. This body has an obligation to fund the public defenders at a caseload that's manageable, which in many cases we fail to do. And this body has an obligation to fund the guardian ad litems at a caseload which we require them to do good cases, which we fail to do. When Representative Cornish was the chair of this committee in the last budget cycle, he refused to give them the financial increases that everybody else got. Why? Because the guardian ad litems board do hard work and sometimes make folks angry when you work on cases that relate to divorce, right? When there are highly contested cases, folks sometimes just don't want them to meddle in these kinds of cases. But the legislature has said, if there's an allegation of abuse or neglect, we want them to have a guardian. We want someone to be advocating for the children. So a lot of this is on us and not on you. And I just want to acknowledge that. For 17 years, or 18 years, my entire time here in the legislature, I've worked on this particular issue. One of the few who has stuck it out with these vulnerable kids. And if we don't provide the funding that they need, it's shame on us, because they can't do their job if we don't give them the money. So I'll end with that, Mr. Chair.
Representative Considine?
Remembered my last question, Mr. Chair. I've heard you advocate for children, you advocate for children. Do you take the children's wishes into account when you do so? Do you present those as part of your findings?
Ms. Treble?
Mr. Chairman and members, absolutely. Yes, we do consider the children's wishes.
And one comment, in 2015, I must have been your predecessor, I met with her. At that time, they were going to a four-year degree and had it on their website. I'm a little disappointed to find out that that has gone backwards. I think the professionalizing the guardian ad litems would be a good thing. Just expressing that. Thank you.
Ms. Treble?
Mr. Chairman and members, we agree in moving the program towards more of a professional role. It is a professional role and should be treated as such. Again, it's resource-driven. It's difficult to find guardians ad litem and require a four-year degree when we don't have the resources to pay them what they should be paid for the positions.
Well, thank you.